So what do you think happened to Michael Gaine?
No comment.
So Paul, we're here at the Centre in Kenmare, and this is quite an important location in the investigation into the disappearance and murder of Mike Gaine. Why is that?
So this is the last place that Mike Gaine was last seen in public. Certainly it's not the last place he was ever seen, but it's the last known public sighting of Mike Gaine. On the 20th of March at 9:48 a.m. He walked into that store and he went and he purchased phone credit, and then he came back out and he got in his RAV4 Jeep, and the camera picked up the Jeep going in the direction of the farm. And that is the last known public sighting they have of CCTV footage they have of Mike Gaine.
And that's significant because he was reported missing on the 21st of March. The last sighting was here on the 20th of March, and it's likely that he was murdered on the 20th of March.
Yeah, and when you think about that, that's interesting. It means, you know, at 9:48 a.m, kind of roughly the last sighting of him, and there are anecdotal accounts of him being in the town of Kenmare around the day of the 20th. They know for certain he was here at 9:48 because of the CCTV footage, and the public appeal that was put out mentioned the clothing he was wearing, but it's now known, obviously, he went to the farm and he never left it. So God knows when, between that time of 9:48 a.m. in the morning, the following day, when exactly he was murdered.
Were you surprised he stopped talking to you in such a aggressive manner, really?
Yeah, I can't really understand the motivation for it. I've been quite upfront with him throughout. I've told him my motivation, that I want to sit down with him, and he agreed that he wanted an opportunity to sit down and tell his story. I don't really know what's triggered this. It seems out of the blue, to be honest.
He might be under a bit of pressure that we don't know anything about, you know. So.
This is it. So look, will we give him a call here on camera, and we'll see how we get on.
Hello.
Mr. Kelley, how are you?
Hey, I'm all right, thank you.
Listen, I know we left things quite badly the last day, and I'm sorry that happened. I just wanted to let you know, as I indicated in my email to you, we have come down to Kerry, and we're trying to do a bit of filming down here, and I just wanted to see whether you'd be open to meeting me and having a discussion about doing a chat on your terms.
No, thank you. I'm going to just leave that issue alone for the present. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask you why you've decided to change your mind? Why you don't want to talk?
No, I don't want to make any comment on it. Thanks.
Well, look, Mr. Kelley, I hope we can continue to talk to each other. I don't know what sparked I suppose you were quite annoyed at me the last time we spoke, and look, there are important questions that we want to ask you, that we want to put on the record. You know, those are questions I've asked you some of those questions before. You know, you're innocent. You're saying you're innocent and that you're not guilty of this crime, and I just want to ask you that on camera. You know what I mean?
Listen, you know, I don't see what's in it for me.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, it's 7 months on. That's why we're doing this. You know, we're doing a kind of sort of a look back podcast over the past 7 months. The fact that there have been no answers, that it seems the case has gone cold, and you know, you remain a suspect in this case, whether you, I suppose, like that or not. And I think that is why I feel it's relevant that you are part of this piece and that we ask you those questions. And I think, you know, to be fair to you, you have answered them, you know, and really all I'm trying to do is, as I said to you already, kind of put that to camera and say, you know, you deny any involvement in this murder and you continue to protest your innocence. And I think you wanted to clear your name. That's what you said to me the last time we spoke.
I don't think that this is going to help me do that. That's why I don't want to do it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you're still insisting that you're innocent. Yes, I assume I can say that.
You can say that.
There's a lot of interest in this. You probably know there are people looking to speak to you, and I thought we had a bit of a relationship where we could have that conversation, you know, with somebody that, you know, you've spoken to in the past and we have somewhat of a rapport with, you know what I mean?
Well, I think you're just going to have to accept that the answer is no for now.
Okay. You haven't had any other engagement with the guards before I let you go?
No.
Are there other suspects in this case that we think we should be looking at? What I mean, you've posited theories to me before as to what happened. So I mean,
this is an open investigation, and discussing other suspects is not what is done.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, we've had lots of conversations. Why have you decided to stop talking now, you know?
Oh, listen, I don't need to explain myself to you. Do you explain yourself to me?
Well, I am explaining myself to you, yeah. We're doing a documentary on
No,
this.
you're explaining me to me, not explaining you to me.
So what do you think happened to Michael Gaine?
No comment.
Okay. But do you want to see this?
Okay, we have to go now. It's been nice talking with you, Paul.
You too, Michael. Do you want to see this solved before I let you go? And I'll leave it at that.
Yes, okay. See you later.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye.
God loves a trier.
Leave it there. I'm joined by Teddy O'Sullivan Casey, local Fine Gael councillor here in Kenmare. But you're not just talking to us obviously as a local councillor. You were a close friend, or you were a friend of Mike's. You knew him well.
Yeah, I would have known Mike well over the years. Along with many years, Mike was nice, decent, hard-working man, devoted to the farm and everything, and a good neighbour to the people as well.
What's the sense in the community? 7 months on, no real answers.
I suppose they're dealing as best we can. Everyone is trying to help each other out. It's still hard. It's still unbelievable what happened, and hard to understand it. Hard to take it all in, I suppose, for the people. But people will rally as best they can and try and continue as normal.
Do people come to you and talk to you about it? Do people in the community still talk about it openly? Or?
Oh, they do, yeah. People do still talk about it, to be fair, yeah. Everyone is thinking of the family, Mike's wife and his sisters, It's so important to support them as well, because they've gone through an extremely traumatic time altogether. You just couldn't believe what they've gone through really since last March, wouldn't it?
We want to really give people a sense of who Mike was. So
yeah.
What was he like as a person?
Mike was a hard-working farmer, and he was big into his rallying as well. He was a rally driver in his earlier days, His farm above would have been the finishing line for lots of rally stages over the years and things like that. And I suppose he was a very knowledgeable man, You could talk to him on any subject really. He travelled extensively as well, I believe. He was big into the rallying, yeah, and I suppose it was very fitting then on the day of his funeral, they had his rally car restored.
Yes.
A group of his friends got together a few weeks beforehand and restored the rally car just for the day, and it was a lovely touch,
And I believe there is going to be a rally held in his memory as well in the coming weeks. We've heard that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I didn't hear that now myself, to be honest. Yeah.
Did Mike ever talk about the man living on the land with him, or did he ever get a sense of what that relationship, if any, was?
I wouldn't know, to be honest. I wouldn't have known that well enough to be talking to him about that. I wouldn't really know, to be honest.
But it seemed as though, I think it's fair to say that he took this man in out of the goodness of his own heart, probably.
Oh, that was Mike down and out, yeah. This man was out camping in the forest, I suppose, and I suppose Mike left him use the house, and, the American then kind of helped him out in the farm as well, then I suppose as kind of payment, because, Mike was trying to manage a lot of stock on his own and things like that,
So he gave him the outhouse, basically. He said you could live there, that's the
old farmhouse, that's right.
Yeah. And he's probably living there about 3 years, was he?
That's what I believe, yeah.
And he wouldn't really interact with people in the town, would he, Michael Kelley? He kept on the...
I don't know. I never saw him. I never before saw the man, to be honest.
Yeah. Just for yourself and other people who knew Mike, and the family, I'm sure, how important is it that justice is finally got in this case?
Oh, hugely important. People really would like to see justice served, and but I suppose we have to appreciate it's going to take time. I suppose there's processes involved and all that kind of stuff, And what, if any, message would you have to anyone who may be involved or who might have information? Yeah, like I've been always saying from the very start, if anyone does know anything, they should come forward straight away to the guards, really. That's very important that they do that. Okay. Listen, thank you so much for talking to me, Teddy. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, listen to me. This guy was gone for 24 hours and 1 fucking minute. And all of a sudden there's there's a Coast Guard helicopter flying overhead.
Yeah.
He's gone for 24 hours and 1 minute.
Yeah.
And there's a Coast Guard helicopter and a drone flying around overhead. Now, who have they ever done that for? Now, who is this guy? Who is Michael Gaine that they would do this for him, huh? Who is he?
So we're sweating a bit because we've made a bit of an unusual journey here. Locals have brought us to the alleged campsite of Michael Kelley. This is where we're told he lived for a period of time. It's not too far away from the actual land that he lived on with Mike Gaine. He eventually moved into a house over there, but we're told he lived here in this tent. It's a bit dilapidated now, but apparently it was quite sophisticated.
Listeners and viewers will remember that there was a tent and a camp found that was described as a place of interest by Gardaí. And if you look over there, that seems to be where he would have, Mr Kelley would have cooked, and here is where he lived and slept. It's much more sophisticated than I thought. I thought it was just been like a tent, but you can see, you know, there's a cooking utensil, a pot on the ground, there's bits of tins.
Sardine tins
strewn around the area. It is more sophisticated than I had anticipated that it would be.
And it gives us an insight into, I suppose, the kind of nomadic lifestyle that Michael Kelley has, that he liked to live on the land, kind of man of the land, sort of man of the woods type person. That seems to be his personality. You know, you think of that picture of him chopping the wood. This is where he kind of lived in solitude. It's an interesting insight into him. And we were told as well, you know, that he liked to go hunting. Apparently so did Michael Gaine. And locals have been telling us that they were even seen hunting together only 24 hours before this tragedy occurred. So, you know, they certainly lived that kind of lifestyle where they went out into the woods like this. So we're coming to the end of the podcast, and we thought we'd sit down. We're here in Tralee, and we're kind of going to go through a lot of the things that we've learned. And we've learned an awful lot down here, Mick, haven't we, to be fair? It's
been a very interesting trip, and you've been more closely involved in this story than I have. But there were a couple of eye-opening incidents for me, I have to say.
What stood out for you? I mean, we were talking a little bit about, I suppose, maybe the reluctance of some people to go on camera, for example.
So there were two things that really stand out for me. Firstly, I think you're right. You go to places and people don't want to talk to you, and that's understandable. The sense I got here was not one of hostility, which I've had in other places where I've been going to.
Yeah.
The sense I got here was there's so much respect for Michael Gaine, his memory, and his loved ones, that people, it's almost as if they felt they were intruding on his grief by talking publicly to us about it. And that's very understandable. The second, and equally stark thing I've taken from this is there's almost a visceral desire for justice from Mike Gaine here. Everybody we spoke to, you could see that they were really determined that the guards would get justice for Mr Gaine, and I found that really, really strong, almost in the countryside.
Thank you to Councillor Teddy Casey, who went on camera, for example, but many people did talk to us off camera and gave us kind of a sense of Mike and the life that he had. And we also got an awful lot of information about Michael Kelley, which we want to talk about. But you know, we just really got a sense for who Mike was as a person. You know, he was known to drink in the Atlantic bar there in Kenmare. He had lots of friends. He was known as a bit of a character. A lot of people like to have a good crack with him. He enjoyed rallying. That was his pastime, and there's going to be a rally in his honour in just a couple of weeks' time. It really shows you the amount of respect and love that there is for the man. And then also he was well known in the farming community. He obviously went to the Kenmare Co-op Mart virtually every day. He sold his animals there, and that's where a lot of his friendships were forged. He's the type of person that would do anything for anybody. And that's what happened here, we're told, in the case of Michael Kelley. He took pity on this man, this homeless man who had been living rough in the area, and we really got a sense for that when we've been here the last 3 days, of exactly the kind of person Michael Kelley was and the conditions that he lived in. And I was quite taken aback, and I'm sure so were you, when we were introduced to that campsite that we learned that Michael Kelley was living in for over a year and a half. It's just only a stone's throw from Mike Gaine's land.
Yes, but we had heard about this, but it was much, I put it this way, it was much less rudimentary than I thought it was. So we had a separate cooking area to the area where he slept. You could see the tins of sardines and other stuff discarded around the area. We saw the cooking utensil. So, you know, it's not as if it was a very, very rudimentary camp. He could easily have lived there. My overriding thought when I was there was, I can see how someone who has been in the army, who does like the outdoor life, I can see how someone could stay there for that length of time, because I remember thinking, Jesus, being in the wilds of Kerry in the summer or the autumn wouldn't have been good crack at all. But you can see how he made a home of it, basically.
Yeah, and he was obviously comfortable there for some time. Now, it's hard to get your head around to understand how this man lived in Maine in the USA, where he had a family. He had 2 daughters and a wife, now estranged ex-wife. We know from court records, and he's acknowledged this, that in 2009 there was a custody battle over those children, and he accused his ex-wife of witchcraft. So that's the kind of things that he was throwing out there. That was thrown out by the judge as nonsense. He now says that he has a good relationship with his now adult daughters, but he moved at some point. He fled the United States, and as recently as last week he told me over the phone that he left the United States because he was being pursued, as he put it, by the Ku Klux Klan. So he has some wild things to say about the reasons why he left the United States, came here and sought asylum here.
Did he give any indication as to why the Ku Klux Klan were after him?
Yeah, I mean, he said that he had information and stuff that would, so he points to the fact that Donald Trump is now president, and he believes that he believed years ago that the United States was going to become a dictatorship, and he had information in relation to that, and so he had to get out of there, he said, because his life was in danger. But of course, he's also spoken before about human trafficking, and he had information about that, and that's why he had to get out for his own safety, as he put it. God knows why that meant that he had to come and live here in Kerry, in the wilds of Kerry, out in a tent in the middle of nowhere. But that's what he decided to do.
Did he have any familial link or anything to Kerry or Ireland? I know Kelly's an Irish name, but it's K-E-L-L-E-Y.
So he says that he has ancestry here, and now, having been found out as an illegal immigrant, he's trying to pursue Irish citizenship here on the basis of his ancestry, he says, from going back a couple of generations. But his reasons for getting here are not clear, but he appears to have lived a very interesting sort of nomadic life, moving about the forestry. That's in the Quilcha forest, just, as I say, a stone's throw from Mike Gaine's land. We also learned that he was, before he worked on Mike's land, he also worked with other farmers and other locals in the area. We're told he worked on fishing boats, that he helped people in the town, that he would do the odd job for cash, and that's how he survived effectively. Obviously, then he spent his money on the sardines that he was eating out in this camp, in this relatively rough, bizarre lifestyle. We were even told that he would hang his bait, his meat, up on this line where he cooked it, in the forest. So he was living like almost a caveman sort of existence. Did you ever work as a butcher, or in a butcher's?
In the capacity of a butcher and meat cutter, yes.
I just lost you there. In a capacity of
a meat cutter, and
Okay, and was that in the United States or here?
In the United States. I don't think that what has been depicted as having happened to the deceased is a result of skills. I wouldn't put that in the ballpark of skills. I would say that.
And you're saying that based off your expertise as a meat cutter?
Well, meat cutting is about creating value and making something artistic, presentable, and appetizing.
Artistic, presentable, and appetizing, right?
Yes, that's what it's about. It's not about chopping things up,
Okay.
Any criminal can do mayhem. Any criminal
can do mayhem. So, do you based off your own expertise, you think that this is a shoddy job?
I have no idea. I haven't seen that. I have not actually seen what the police have seen, and they haven't presented it to the public for inspection. But according to their accounts of it, it simply sounds as though they said that he was cut into small pieces. It doesn't, that doesn't imply skill.
Doesn't imply skill. Okay. When people are trying to maybe make something of the fact that you have a history in meat cutting and connecting it to this, your response to that is okay. So Mike Gaine at some point 3 years ago took him in and offered him work, and in exchange he allowed him to live in that greenhouse that we pointed out the other day on the land. So out of the goodness of his own heart, he gave Michael Kelley a home to live. And at some point then, around the 20th of March, this final encounter between these two men occurred. And according to Michael Kelley's own account, he would be the last known person anyway at this point, other than the killer, to have seen Michael Gaine alive. And we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that he said to me. Obviously, we're here in Tralee, and he could turn up behind us here at any point. As you'll have heard in this podcast, having spoke at length for months, he's now suddenly randomly decided that he doesn't want to talk anymore. Was it the threat of going on camera, or was he fed up with talking? I don't know, but we sent him a text even yesterday, just sending him a photograph of the camp that he lived in, and he told me, we are done here. So as far as he's concerned, he's not interested in talking anymore.
Did you find that strange?
Yeah, I mean, look, people change. It's not the first person that's decided they haven't wanted to talk to me or anyone else for that matter. He has said an awful lot, and I suppose maybe, what more can he say? He's, to a certain extent, he's not said it on camera, but he has revealed an awful lot about himself and his relationship with Mr Gaine and his theories about the investigation, be they difficult to understand or not. But I think it would have been interesting, and still would like to ask him on camera, if you are not the person who did this, who did, and why are you protesting your innocence? I would ask him all those things on camera. Did you kill him? Certainly that is the belief of the Gardaí when they arrested him. Obviously, Mr Kelley completely maintains his innocence in this, and he believes he's being framed.
We always talk about this thing about Occam's razor, that the simplest solution is usually the right solution. And you have to ask yourself, why would someone frame him, and why would someone go to the lengths that they did by disposing of the body in such a horrific manner in his own land?
Yes, and as I said, alluded to earlier, the type of person that does that, the type of mindset that they have to not only just murder somebody in cold blood, but then to dismember their remains and to clean the scene over a period of hours, it takes a certain type of mindset to do that. We know from the timeline, I want to spend time talking about this, we were at the Centra there in Kenmare, and we know that Mike Gaine was last seen on CCTV footage at 9:48 a.m. and he went in the direction of his farm. So I asked, a couple of months ago, I asked Mr Kelley, when was the last time you saw Michael Gaine? And he said, I don't want to get caught out here. He said, but I think it was somewhere around 10 a.m. on the Thursday, the 20th. It fits the timeline, yeah. He's acknowledging that he saw him around 10 a.m, which would be roughly in and around the time that Gardaí do believe that Mike Gaine returned to his farm. So I asked him, well, what happened? What did he say to you? And he said, he told me he was going to go and see a man about a farm, and that he told me he would be back later that night. That's the last face-to-face encounter he said he had with him, and the next thing he sees friends and family members of Mike Gaine showing up the following day to the farm looking for him, trying to find out what happened to him. He acknowledges, because other people had told us, that when these people came onto the farm, he was actually under a car fixing it at the time. This would be one of the odd jobs that he would actually do for Mike Gaine. He was fixing up a car at the time, and he took no notice really of what was going on until he saw the size and scale of the search that occurred over the following 24 hours and into the weeks ahead.
It appears Mr Kelley was there all day on the 20th and
he was.
The 21st.
But according to his own account, Mike Gaine had told him he was off to see a man about a tractor and he would be back later that night. So I suppose by his account, nothing untoward or unusual had happened at that point. Could you account to me what happened there?
Well, the problem is I don't want to get caught up. I mean, I think it was on the 20th, right? But I mean, I can't. I should have this in my memory, but I can't. I have to look at it. I'd have to have a calendar in front of me.
Roughly what time you last saw him, and on what day?
Listen, I don't keep very close track. See,
of course, yeah.
Like my phone, like also it's like there's like the tiny little. My eyes aren't so good, and there's these tiny. The time is in the tiny little print, and it's like white on white, or it's like white on tan, so I can barely see it. So I was in the 10 o'clock hour, at some point in the 10 o'clock hour.
Okay. And he had indicated to you he was going to meet somebody or something like that?
Right.
Can you tell me about that? What do you recall him saying to you?
He was going to meet a man about a tractor.
Meet a man about a tractor, okay. And so that was the last you saw of him?
Yeah.
And were you planning on seeing him again, or was there a plan to meet again, or what was the normal routine?
Well, right. I mean, he was supposedly coming back that night.
So he was doing his usual sort of chores, was he?
Yeah, right.
Okay. You posited a theory as well to the reporter about what you thought might have happened, that someone could have led him into a house with a shotgun.
Well, I don't know what I said. I mean, the only thing I would opine is that, I mean, if possibly somebody could have used a firearm to direct him to walk away into the cover of the surrounding copious amounts of trees and wilderness.
But then if we follow that through, if something happened to Mr Gaine outside the farm, how did they end up in the farm? His remains, his chopped up remains, how did they end up on the farm, in the slurry tank?
That certainly alludes to whatever happened to him happened at the farm. And, I also put that to Michael Kelley over the course of the many times that I interviewed him. And I said, it's more likely, isn't it, that whatever happened to Mike happened on the farm and while you were there? And he said, yeah, I mean, it's quite likely, but he pointed to the size of the farm and the land, and he said, I might not have been witness to what might have happened. And I mentioned to you, he posited a theory to me. He said, perhaps somebody, and I will get the quote, but he said perhaps somebody used a firearm and lured him into the barn and shot him in there, where he would have been completely out of sight and no one would have seen or heard anything.
But that barn, we could see it from the road, and it's from that, is it the greenhouse where Mr Kelley was saying, it's maybe 200 feet?
Yeah.
So it's not as if it's set away back in deep, dark Tralee or Kerry countryside. It's practically on the road. It's definitely, I'd say it's maybe 400 or 500 metres off a very, very busy road. And it's very close to the old house where Mr Kelley was living. So does somebody bring him into the barn, shoot him, dispose of the body, and then drive off without being seen? There's other houses in that road. It's a very, very busy road. Surely somebody would have seen something.
You would think so. This is the exact quote by Michael Kelley. It's possible somebody could have used a firearm to direct him to walk away into the barn, cover up the copious amounts of tree, and they would be covered up by the copious amounts of trees and wilderness. And I said to him that it was all likelihood that he was killed on the land and while you were there. It seems plausible to suggest that that is the case, but I want to point out that the property is very large, but not only that, the terrain is very varied. You could be 50 yards away from the barn and invisible down in the river valley. There's so much speculation, I don't want to enter into speculation.
Yes, but the living and working areas, in other words, the buildings on the farm are quite concentrated and close together. They're within a couple hundred feet of each other, really. From where we can see all the outhouses and the buildings and the barn and that sort of stuff. So it's like almost like a stockade. And then there's the land, and we were up. There's extreme wilderness there, but the business end of the farm and the living end of the farm, they're all quite close together. That is true.
Yeah. To be fair to Mr Kelley's account, you could surmise that he would have been far into the wilderness of the land himself, chopping wood or something like that, and perhaps if something untoward did happen on the land, he was away from it at the time. And I will say that is a possibility. I asked him about, because people will say, well, what about other theories? And we'll talk about other theories in a moment, but he believes he's being tried on purpose by the Gardaí, being framed in the public domain. He said, in my mind, there's an obvious attempt to try me in the public medium, and that's why I spoke to me, because they've been acting in a manner prejudicial to the case, and it reveals their hand a bit, in my opinion, to engage in a cover-up by misdirection. So he believes that he is the scapegoat here, and that he is being framed. And I said, well, why is that? Well, he said, because I lived there. So the obvious answer being, I was the only other person there, so they're just pinning it on me.
Does that make sense? Well, I don't think we need to give any credence to the cover-up aspect. That's just nonsense for me. It doesn't really make, it's crazy. But why would they decide to carry out the murder when he's living there and frame him there? There's too many moving parts in that for me. To do that, they would have to have known that Mr Kelley wouldn't be there for a certain amount of time, that give them the time to kill him, bring him into the barn, cut up the body, chop up the body, put it in the slurry tank. There's a lot of moving parts in that.
There are. Let's briefly talk about, because we mentioned conspiracy theories the other day, and Michael Kelley has his own theories about what happened. He mentioned in the first interview with me and in subsequent interviews that he believes that criminal elements were trying to stitch him up, and that he's alluded to a possible criminal involvement, and he even mentioned to me, that Gardaí were looking in caves for an old cache of IRA weapons or explosives or gold. So he was trying to surmise that something else untoward was going on Mike Gaine's land, and that's maybe why he was targeted by criminal gangs. And we must admit, we have encountered people who've said to us they believe Michael Kelley is innocent.
Yes, they do.
And they have actually said that they think that there is some sort of local or foreign gang operating in Kenmare who for some reason are involved in this.
There were people who were very strongly of the belief that Michael Kelley was innocent, and that there was, shall we call it, an Eastern European drugs gang operating in the area. So the sense I got was that maybe they were using Mr Gaine's land without the knowledge of Mr Gaine or Mr Kelley. Maybe Mr Gaine stumbled across them and they decided to kill him. I sort of got that sense. And some people, they're very, very strongly of the belief that Mr Kelley is innocent, and that there is an international drugs gang link to this.
Yeah, but we're not getting that from our sources in terms of whether Gardaí actually are investigating that as credible or not. You have to at least mention it, because we can't be so biased as to think that maybe there's only one suspect in this case. Perhaps there are other suspects in this case. We haven't got an indication to that whatsoever. The other thing that's, you were talking about how the remains were disposed and all of that. Say Michael Kelley saw Mike Gaine at around 10 a.m. that morning. If the murder happened in and around that time, nobody else came onto that land theoretically to search for him until around that time the next day. So there was 24 hours roughly, of which there could have been a period of time to kill, dismember and clean up the scene.
Yes.
Could someone have cleaned up that much blood? We mentioned that the barn was supposedly disinfected, but then others have pointed out to us, well, it wouldn't be unusual for a barn to be disinfected. So there's a lot of moving parts in this. It's very, very difficult to figure out what happened here in terms of the cleanup and all of that.
Well, say that's the most likely scenario. If you resile or move away from that scenario, the only other scenario really is that Mr Gaine was killed elsewhere. Gardaí started a search for him when he didn't come home at 11 o'clock that night. I think Mrs Gaine contacted family and friends. The next day they went to the house. So there would have been Garda activity around that development or that piece of land from the 20th of March, okay? How could somebody have decided, right, we've killed him, let's dump him in his own slurry tank? How would they have decided, right, it's safe enough to get to that place, even though there are Gardaí all over the area, there are Gardaí driving around the area, maybe not roadblocks, but there's a Garda presence in that area, and there's a presence of other people in that area, really from the 20th of March right all the way up. Until the body is found on the 16th of May.
Now, the dissenting opinion on that, and we've had locals actually tell us this, people who live within the vicinity of the farm have said there was not very many Gardaí around at all during the course of the missing persons investigation, and they're surmising that it would be possible, theoretically, for someone to have moved the body onto the land while there was a Garda presence there. It seems extraordinary to me, but I suppose it's not impossible.
No, my point is, say that we know that the farm was sealed off as a crime scene after the partial remains were found, so that was in the 16th of May, right? But there was a Garda presence. Like when I was there were Gardaí at the front gate, there were Gardaí driving around the area. How could someone be confident of bringing his remains from point A to point B, as in the slurry tank, without chancing upon a Garda?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Say it's a 4-mile journey. How could someone be confident enough to say, I'm going to drive his body from here to there, and I know there won't be any witnesses, there won't be any Gardaí, I won't be stopped, there won't be Gardaí coming across me. So if you're a murderer and you think, right, I have to get his body back to the farm to start this massive cover-up, how am I going to do it? How am I going to be sure that I'm not going to come across any guards?
Yeah, that's all fair. I mean, I suppose if you had a very good understanding of the terrain, perhaps maybe you could circumnavigate the guards, but even that is hard to believe that somebody would take that risk.
Do we agree that the only way they will have got that Mr Gaine's body or his remains to the farm were driving down the driveway? I can't imagine that they would have brought his body over cross country.
No.
It has to have come that way.
If they were transported there after the fact, yeah.
We were spotted
Yeah.
Okay, guards were called for us because people in the area are very concerned about movements and stuff that happens. So, you know, you're driving on a pretty busy Kerry road at any time. Somebody drives down that long driveway. It's probably 3/4 of a kilometre long from the road to his farm. I think somebody would have noticed.
You would think so. I just wanted to mention, I won't read out every single quote by Michael Kelley, but you know, he was very reluctant in those early days to accept that the body parts that were found in the tank were those of Mike Gaine. And I remember, you know, I'm just going to read out that he said that Gardaí don't have any evidence. And if they don't have his body, if they have no DNA, then it is a missing persons case. And one plausible explanation is that Michael Gaine staged his own disappearance because of the evidence, his connection to the evidence that they found. Now, he was trying to suggest that the body parts were not those of Mike Gaine and that they belonged to Mike Gaine and they were somebody else. After I told him the remains were identified, he said, I would like to take that at face value. I'm not here to contradict them in their statement, but for the record, I do want to state that the thing that seems to throw doubt on their narrative is they say they discovered Mr Gaine's remains in the tank after they thoroughly searched it. In other words, in the first week they conducted a thorough search of the tank, and then presumably at that time somebody had to sign off on that tank being searched thoroughly and emptied it of any evidence. So what they appear to be saying to you, me and everyone else is that they went back and they searched it again. So how is it possible for them to find body parts after they thoroughly emptied the tank and searched it? So that's his
Well, there is a
question.
plausible explanation for this. People probably might not want to hear it, but we know that on the first or second day of his disappearance, it was a missing person search. And we know that that large slurry tank was drained of all the liquid, but there was a significant amount of sludge left in the tank, a foot, 2 foot maybe. So we know that firefighters did their best and they used poles walking around that, the bottom, I suppose, the surface of that slurry tank, and using poles to search for a body. But they were looking for a body, they weren't looking for small body parts.
And what Kelley is trying to say, and we don't know, but he's saying he watched all of this. And he's saying they searched the tank. That means they sprayed it down, collected everything out of the bottom with squeegees and shovels, and then they signed off somewhere that all of the evidence was collected. And now they're being told that what happened was that something came out of the tank so big that it obstructed the machine. So he was trying to cast out and say they literally cleaned that tank from top to bottom, and that he witnessed that, and he deduced that the body parts had been found as well. He mentioned that.
Right, well, I'd be pretty happy that there was a significant amount of sludge left in that tank, because how could you even get rid of that? Because it takes out liquid. So I'm told, and I have seen this elsewhere, that there was a lot of sludge, and they waded through it with the poles, looking for, he was 6 foot, wasn't he?
Yeah.
A big body, and that is not what was there. It was a lot of small body parts.
And just on that point, and finally, really, you know, and it's quite on this in terms of the theory of the murder and how it happened. Obviously, the body was dismembered, you know, and Gardaí believed initially maybe that this chainsaw that they discovered had been used. When you think about it, if a chainsaw was used, the blood spatter probably would have been everywhere, and as far as we know, there wasn't anything in relation to that. And so, you know, Kelley has seized upon this and said about the glossy photographs of the chainsaw that he was shown. He said the Gardaí were playing a little card game. He said of the Gardaí, where is their evidence? Where is the macabre photo? They don't have it. They have nothing. And if they did show me a glossy colour photo of their human remains, I bet I would have called bullshit right there and said there's no way those human remains could be his.
So what I'm getting from this is he's saying a chainsaw wouldn't have been used because of the blood splatter and the amount of blood. It would have been something more perhaps surgical or more clinical.
Yeah.
To not, you know, chop through it like or not even, you know, cut through it like a tree being saw cut, but perhaps something like a scalpel or a big version of that.
Yeah, and he called it Texas Chainsaw Massacre bullshit. That's the way he described it. You know, but I've put to him since, you know, the Garda theory that perhaps other implements were used, and he won't comment on that. But you know, it's this is why I think it's interesting to mention all these things that he said, because you're talking about a man who's now decided to shut up and stop talking because he thinks it's not relevant for him to speak, and he said something to us that it wasn't to his benefit to speak now. But he is the person who's gone into incredible detail with conspiracy theories of what he thinks has happened, and even going so far as to give us a theory as to how his friend Mike Gaine was killed. And that is why, apart from the fact that he was arrested in suspicion of murder, it's relevant to talk about him in detail, because all of those things that he's saying have to be taken with a bit of interest.
Can we talk just about an aspect I'm interested in, because people might not be aware of this and might not know the whole thing about an arrest. Gardaí have to form an opinion that a person is a suspect. So as a senior investigating officer has to go, right, you know, you don't tick all these boxes. That senior investigating officer has to decide, him or herself, I believe this man is a suspect, and I believe that I want to put questions and evidence we have to him.
Yeah.
So they held him under Section 4 of the Criminal Justice Act, which allows Gardaí 24 hours to detain someone, not including breaks. So when he was arrested earlier this year, it was maybe 30 hours, something like that, right? But here's the kicker. The guards cannot go, right, let's arrest him again.
Yeah.
They can only rearrest with judicial permission, so they have to go to a judge. And they have to have new evidence or new information to put to him. We have seen people in high-profile murder cases who have been arrested, released, then rearrested. But as I said, there's a high bar for this. So if the guards want to rearrest a suspect, there has to be new evidence. It can't just be, right, let's bring him in again, let's sweat him. There has to be evidence.
Just another thing I wanted to point out, that, and I mean, people are different, human beings are different, but I've gotten to know him a bit, and I interviewed him a few times, and I said to him, if you don't mind me saying to you, you know, you lost a friend, you lost someone you lived with, someone who took you in for 3 years, and I've never really heard you say, like, you come across quite cold to me. And if you don't mind me saying, like, you haven't really ever much talked about, you know, your emotions and how you feel. And he this was around the time of the funeral and whether or not he was going to go. And he said, I couldn't give a fuck what people think. He said, am I going to put ashes on my fucking forehead? He said, like, he said, I'm a very private person, and that's why I don't say my emotions. But with a bit of pushing, I got him to, he did open up and say, I take it that what happened to Mike Gaine was a tragedy. He alluded in the very first interview, and despite the fact that I tried to go back to it numerous times, he wouldn't open up about it. He had somewhat of a fractious relationship with Mike Gaine. Like, because I said, how did you find him? What was he like as a person? And he said he was okay. But I asked him, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, this person's just been murdered. You're a murder suspect, and you're going to say he was okay. So did you have problems with him? And he said, I'm not going to comment further on that. So, you know, he, at no point, despite numerous times being asked, and people are different, as I said, but I've asked him numerous times, you know, to pay tribute to the man. And I have to say that he really didn't.
So there might be a cultural element to this. In Ireland, you know, even if you weren't on good terms with someone who died, you would try and be nice about them, and you try and talk about the positives.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an American thing of you just be direct. Or maybe that's his personality.
And this is the thing, maybe that's his personality. He's very direct. As he says, he likes to talk about matters of record and fact. Having said that, he also has gone into a lot of speculation himself and conspiracy theories himself. So he has contradicted himself in relation to that. All I will say is that Michael Kelley is an extremely interesting person, and that trek up to that campsite was extraordinary yesterday, and we got covered in muck and dirt, whatever, but it was worth it because we really got an insight into this person and the type of life, strange life that he has lived here in Ireland. He may well just be that, a strange person, but there's still a lot of questions there.
Looking at the camp, I thought he was more complex of a person and more capable of a person looking at it than beforehand. In other words, it wasn't just something thrown together.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite significant and quite complex.
Yeah, and it just in terms of his status here, I think this is also really interesting. Like, he has been discovered to be an illegal immigrant here, and under the laws of our country, he should be gone. But instead, he is being housed. We now know he's moved from the place in Tralee that we spent the entire day.
In the rain.
But to be fair, we didn't realise he was moved later this summer, probably because of all the publicity and stuff. But that was a council house, and it was facilitated obviously by the Gardaí as well. So he was moved into a council house at the cost of you and I. We now know that he's still living here in Tralee in another state-owned type accommodation, and he is in the process of trying to become an Irish citizen, and he just is having that process renewed so that he's not deported. That in and of itself is interesting, because the Gardaí obviously clearly don't want him to go anywhere, and he says he's not going anywhere. He says he's not fleeing, he hasn't got a passport, he can't leave this country. But it is just interesting that he is here in Tralee and he hasn't left, and the eye of suspicion is still on him.
And the Garda investigation is ongoing, and as I often say, we are lucky if we know 10% of what's happening in an investigation. And when I say we, I mean the media in general. So it has gone quiet, and that was one of the things that I got speaking to the people in Kenmare. They do not want Michael Gaine to be forgotten about, nor do they want the investigation to be forgotten about. They want it in the headlines because they think, and I agree, that when there's publicity about a crime or investigation, it does keep Gardaí on their toes. Not that they're not investigating it, but it's just a wee bit of maybe a reminder that people are still there. But I have no doubt the Garda investigation is ongoing. You're hearing vibes about levels of confidence and that sort of thing. But the investigation is ongoing. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And they're working away in the background. And something could happen 5 minutes after we finish this pod, knowing our luck.
It could. We do know, there's a couple of things we have learned over the past couple of weeks and even the last 2 days down here in terms of the Garda investigation. We know that they are very keenly interested in everything that Michael Kelley has to say, be it to members of the public, friends, and to us, the media. We know that they have taken a very deep interest into everything that he has said, and they seem to be happy for him to continue to talk. We know that they have taken an interest in that, and maybe he knows that now, and maybe that's why he has decided to finally stop talking. The other thing we know is, as you said, we've gotten indications that there does seem to be progress in this investigation, albeit it's happening very quietly in the background. They do appear to be confident of possibly progressing this in the coming weeks and months.
I think that's fair, but again, we'll be the last to know.
We will. So thank you to everybody for following along with us on this crazy journey, but some of it's been crazy. Going up into the mountains to find that camp was crazy, but we got a lot of unique insights, and thank you to a lot of the locals who spoke to us, many of them who didn't talk on the record but provided valuable insight into the life of Mike Gaine and who he was, and you know, it's really been very interesting.
The last thing I'll say is the murder of Mike Gaine is, for me, is hanging like a pall over Kenmare. People, it's on a lot of minds of people, and I think people don't want Mr Gaine to be forgotten, and they are desperate for justice for him and his family.
And let's hope that justice comes sooner rather than later.
Okay,